Picture this. You're walking through the royal gardens of Hampton Court Palace in 1611 when you hear the sound of a chess master calling out moves. But instead of wooden pieces clicking on a board, you hear human voices responding to commands. What you're witnessing is King James I's most disturbing innovation, a living chess set where real people serve as pieces in elaborate games that blur the line between entertainment and psychological torture. What you're about to discover isn't just another tale of royal eccentricity. It's the story of how James I, the scholarly king who commissioned the King James Bible, created a twisted form of entertainment that treated human beings as pawns in a game where losing could mean far more than simply being captured. This buried truth reveals how absolute power can transform even intellectual pursuits into instruments of cruelty. Before we uncover this shocking secret about one of England's most celebrated monarchs, make sure to subscribe to Buried Truths and hit that notification bell. We're about to reveal how the king who united England and Scotland also created one of history's most elaborate systems for dehumanizing his subjects. James Stuart came to the English throne in 1603 after Elizabeth I's death, inheriting not just a kingdom but a court culture that prized intellectual games and elaborate entertainments. As James VI of Scotland, he had already developed a reputation as a scholar king, with interests ranging from theology to the supernatural. But his greatest passion was chess, a game he saw as the perfect metaphor for royal power and political strategy. The king's obsession with chess went far beyond casual enjoyment. He studied the game with the intensity of a military strategist, analyzing famous matches and developing new theories about chess as a reflection of divine order. James believed that mastering chess was essential to understanding statecraft, seeing parallels between moving pieces on a board and managing subjects within a kingdom. But James's intellectual approach to chess gradually evolved into something far more sinister. Frustrated by the limitations of wooden pieces that couldn't truly represent the complexity of human nature, he began experimenting with ways to make the game more realistic. His solution was as brilliant as it was horrifying. He would use actual people as chess pieces, creating a living game that would test both his strategic skills and his subjects' loyalty. The transformation of Hampton Court's great courtyard into a giant chessboard was a marvel of engineering and craftsmanship. The king commissioned Italian architects to create a playing surface made of alternating black and white marble squares, each large enough to accommodate a human figure. The board was surrounded by elevated viewing areas where James and his guests could observe the games from multiple angles. The selection process for James's human chess pieces was elaborate and deeply disturbing. The king established criteria for each type of piece based on physical characteristics and social status that reflected his understanding of chess hierarchy. Pawns were recruited from among the poorest subjects, servants, laborers, and petty criminals who had little choice but to accept their roles in the royal game. The more valuable pieces required more careful selection. Bishops were chosen from among minor clergy who had fallen from royal favor, their religious training making them suitable for pieces that moved diagonally across moral and political boundaries. Knights were selected from young courtiers eager to advance their careers, their ambition making them willing to leap over obstacles in pursuit of advancement. Rooks were represented by older military officers whose rigid thinking made them perfect for pieces that could only move in straight lines. The queen pieces were the most controversial selections. James chose prominent court ladies whose intelligence and influence made them powerful but also dangerous, capable of moving in any direction across the political landscape. The kings, naturally, were represented by James himself and whichever opponent he was playing against, usually foreign ambassadors, rival nobles, or occasionally his own son, Prince Henry. These living monarchs would stand at the back of their respective armies, directing movements while remaining relatively safe from direct conflict. The rules governing James's human chess were far more complex than traditional chess, incorporating elements of court protocol, social hierarchy, and political maneuvering. Each piece had specific costumes, movements, and behaviors that reflected their chess role, while also serving as commentary on their position within English society. Pawns wore simple gray tunics and could only move forward one square at a time, forbidden from speaking unless spoken to by higher-ranking pieces. Their vulnerability in the game reflected their expendable status in real life, and James seemed to take particular pleasure in sacrificing pawns to protect more valuable pieces. The psychological impact on the human pieces was devastating. Being selected for James's chess set meant accepting a role that stripped away individual identity and reduced participants to their function within the king's game. Many struggled with the dehumanization inherent in their positions, while others found themselves trapped between their desire to advance at court and their horror at what they were being asked to do. Training for the human chess pieces was intensive and humiliating. Participants had to learn not just the movements allowed to their piece type, but also the subtle signals James used to communicate his strategic intentions. They practiced formations, capture sequences, and the elaborate ceremonies that accompanied special moves like castling or en passant captures. The capture mechanism was perhaps the most disturbing aspect of James's living chess. When a piece was captured, they didn't simply leave the board, they were subjected to various forms of humiliation or punishment that reflected their expendable status in the game. Captured pawns might be forced to serve the opposing player for the remainder of the match, while captured nobles faced public mockery or temporary imprisonment. The games themselves were elaborate social events that could last for hours or even days. James would invite foreign dignitaries, rival nobles, and court observers to witness these spectacles, using them as demonstrations of his absolute power and intellectual superiority. The psychological warfare involved in moving human pieces added layers of complexity that went far beyond traditional chess strategy. James's human chess games became increasingly elaborate as his confidence in the system grew. He began staging themed matches that reflected current political situations, using the games to work through diplomatic challenges or send messages to potential enemies. A game featuring pieces dressed as Spanish courtiers might serve as a subtle threat during treaty negotiations, while matches involving French costumed pieces could signal shifting alliances. The international reaction to James's human chess was mixed, but generally appalled. Foreign ambassadors who were invited to participate found themselves in impossible positions. Refusing would insult their host, while accepting meant participating in something that violated basic human dignity. Most chose to participate while secretly reporting their horror to their home governments. Some European courts attempted to copy James's innovation, but none achieved the same level of systematic organization. The combination of resources, absolute authority, and psychological understanding required to maintain such a system was beyond the reach of most monarchs, making James's human chess a uniquely English form of royal entertainment. The financial cost of maintaining the human chess system was enormous. Beyond the construction and maintenance of the giant chessboard, James had to provide costumes, training, and compensation for hundreds of participants. The elaborate ceremonies and viewing facilities required their own staff, while the political implications of the games demanded careful diplomatic management. But the true cost was measured in human dignity rather than royal treasury expenditures. Participants in James's chess games found their sense of self-worth systematically eroded by their role as living game pieces. Many developed what would now be recognized as symptoms of trauma and learned helplessness, unable to function normally when not following chess-related commands. The psychological techniques James used to maintain control over his human pieces were sophisticated and cruel. He encouraged competition between participants for better roles in future games, creating a system where people actively collaborated in their own dehumanization. The promise of advancement to more powerful piece types motivated individuals to accept increasingly degrading treatment. James also used the human chess games as a form of surveillance and control over his court. Participants were expected to report on each other's behavior both during and outside of games, creating a network of informants who were motivated by fear of being demoted to less prestigious piece types. The king's most disturbing innovation was the introduction of sacrifice games, where participants understood that their pieces might be deliberately destroyed for strategic advantage. These matches tested the ultimate loyalty of subjects who had to accept that their king might sacrifice them for the greater good of winning the game. The end of James's human chess experiment came gradually rather than through any single dramatic event. As the king aged and his health declined, the physical and logistical demands of maintaining the system became increasingly difficult. More importantly, his son Prince Henry began expressing open disapproval of the games, seeing them as beneath the dignity of the English crown. The final human chess game took place in 1620, shortly before James's death. By this time, many of the original participants had died, been dismissed, or simply refused to continue their involvement. The elaborate costumes had grown shabby. The marble chessboard showed signs of wear, and the psychological damage to participants had become impossible to ignore. When Charles I inherited the throne, one of his first acts was to dismantle his father's human chess system. The giant marble board was broken up and used for other construction projects, while the costumes and equipment were burned or sold. Most importantly, a royal decree forbade any future use of human beings as game pieces, officially ending the practice that had defined much of James's later reign. The records of James's human chess games were largely suppressed by subsequent monarchs who recognized that such activities reflected poorly on the dignity of the English crown. Official histories focused on James's scholarly achievements and political unification of England and Scotland, while the more disturbing aspects of his reign were quietly forgotten. However, enough evidence survived in private papers, foreign diplomatic reports, and court memoirs to confirm that the human chess system was far more extensive and systematic than previously understood. The king who gave England its most famous Bible translation also created one of history's most elaborate systems for treating human beings as entertainment objects. The buried truth about James I's living chess set forces us to reconsider our understanding of this supposedly enlightened monarch. His intellectual achievements cannot be separated from his willingness to dehumanize subjects for his own entertainment, revealing the dangerous potential for even scholarly pursuits to become instruments of oppression. James's story serves as a powerful reminder that intelligence and learning are not guarantees of moral behavior. A king who could produce brilliant theological treatises and commission lasting religious works was simultaneously capable of reducing human beings to the status of game pieces, demonstrating how easily intellectual sophistication can coexist with fundamental cruelty. Today, as we continue to grapple with questions about power, dignity, and the treatment of individuals within larger systems, James's human chess serves as a cautionary tale about the dangers of treating people as means to an end rather than as ends in themselves. His games remind us that even activities presented as harmless entertainment can become vehicles for systematic dehumanization when conducted by those with unlimited authority over others. The king who united two kingdoms also created a system that divided human beings into categories of expendability, treating subjects as pieces in games whose rules they had no power to influence. His legacy as both scholar and tyrant demonstrates the complex and often contradictory nature of historical figures who combined genuine achievements with practices that violated the most basic principles of human respect and dignity.